Our next speaker is ready to go, and his title is 9 times out of 10, My Ideas Failed, How to Successfully Run a Small Business from your Farm Shop. And John Gehrer grew up on a grain and livestock farm. He attended the University of Manitoba and received his degree in agriculture and has a master's in soil science and an MBA. His wife, Angelica, is a teacher and an early childhood educator. They've been working internationally as consultants, mostly in the former Soviet Union. John has a small certified organic grain farm located just south of Winnipeg and is also a custom pesticide applicator. They started with Never Spill Spout in 2003. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Okay. The title says that 9 out of the 10 ideas that I had have failed. So I hope that this is not the reason that you're here just to listen to all the things that I have failed at. So this is what it looks like in our dining room often. There's a lot of office work happening there. And the purpose of this talk is not to get rich quick here. So there will be, no recipe to get you there very quickly. I had an idea for myself that I was using on my farm, and it turned out into something that could help other farmers. The purpose of me doing this was not to quit farming. It was just something that I kind of had some interested in and wanted to see if it goes anywhere. For me, it's a little bit like farm diversification, and sort of instead of getting some livestock, maybe doing a little bit other things on the side would be beneficial financially. And of course, I like tinkering with things, so it's a passion of mine to try to do a few things like that. But in the end, if you have a lot of fun doing stuff, it still doesn't help anything if it doesn't make any money. And so we try to make it into a small business, and so far so good. And of course, variety is the spice of life. My farm is a little bit small right now to be considered a real farmer. We did spend 15 years overseas on and off, and therefore maybe it stayed a little bit small. And that's why it was a really good opportunity to do this. Now, if there's anybody here that has some ideas of what they want to do, I guess a little bit is to run it successfully is very simple. You take more money in than you spend, okay? And it sounds simple, but in the end of the day, this is how it has to work. When you have something that's totally new and unproven, of course, for me, it's really hard to spend money. So I went on it very slowly. And I was quite clear that even if this would not work out at all, that there would be no negative financial situation to our family from this. Sometimes we watch, of course, Dragon's Den, and after everybody did their pitch, or after some people did their pitch, and the people that are supposed to buy in don't want to buy in, and the people said, well, I remortgaged my house and all that kind of stuff. This is not where I wanted to be on this thing. So this was the problem. Okay, this is not supposed to be an advertisement, but I'm using our gadget here, as a kind of a case study here. Problem is, I was farming by myself mostly, and then filling up grain bins. It was hard to be at the bottom of the auger and at the top of the auger. So sometimes there would be grain piles that were beside the bin instead of the grain in the bin. Of course, this was very good for all the deer and other animals that were around the farmyard, but not so good for myself. So then I thought it would be really good if we could have a means of detecting when the grain bin is full. So my research and development budget was like this. I bought 2 5-gallon pails that were used, a halogen light, a sensor, and an extension cord. So with all this investment, I put all this thing together, and it actually worked quite well. The sensor is from a feeding system, so it's no different than inside the feeding system where the auger fills up a pail, and then the sensor has to detect when the pail is full and shut it off. So why couldn't it do this in the top of a grain bin? So now that we have figured out how this thing works, it was not so complicated. We had to rely on our friends to kind of get it out in the public. I had no idea how to do this. The only thought would be to buy a lot of advertisement, which of course would be very expensive. And we also had no ideas or plans of going to anything like Dragon's Den. And it was not really that important anyways if it wouldn't work out. But in the end, we had some good friends that were at Manitoba Agriculture and in Ag Days. And we ended up in, I think, 2003 in the New Inventions department, which is really great because they get a discounted price. So all you had to do at the time was to show that it was something that was not readily available on the market, and then you could get a booth for a good price. And our friends helped us, you know, develop the backboard and all that kind of stuff. And in the end of the day, we got second prize for Inventors Showcase, which of course helped us. We got some, I think, free newspaper articles or advertising with that, and it actually turned out quite good. At the same time, we had no Spout, except we had sold 30 of them on paper. So my thought was that we better start manufacturing these things. And then that's what we, in the end, did. So really what I'm trying to say is we had almost zero money, probably less than $1,000 invested in this project. So if we wouldn't have sold anything and people would have thought, well, that's a stupid idea, we probably would have just left it at that. So we did make our 30 units. I think at the time they were about $300 a piece. Now they're more than twice that much money. And we sent them out, and they worked pretty good. And again, we want to thank the people that have helped us that developed this. They were working at Manitoba Agriculture. And just like any great Canadian that works in our area, they get exported to the United States. So Scott Day, just like Wayne Gretzky, got exported to California. So we had to start making these things. And of course, our house turned into a little factory, and our shop turned into a little factory, and like I say, it turned out actually quite good. We decided to get the electrical harnesses. Maybe I should explain how it works a little bit better. So when the grain bin is full, like I said before, there was a sensor at the top. Once the sensor gets activated, it sends a signal to the alarm, and the alarm tells you to stop filling up the grain bin. And it needed quite a big harness that we've sort of changed over the years. We think we have it figured out now, and this one gets made by a company. We don't make that one ourselves. This is what our office looks like all summer long. We do sell a lot on the phone, one at a time, and then we usually send them out COD by Canada Post. We find that Canada Post is cheaper than courier. They also go to all the farms. On our own farm, it's really hard to get a courier to bring anything to because they can never find us. And it's actually surprising how quickly Canada Post gets things there. They're not supposed to get things there quickly, but they do get things there very quickly. Like we can have a turnaround from Winnipeg to Alberta in 3 days, which we think is really great. And COD works really good for us because then the farmer has to pay when they pick it up. And in over 10,000 spouts, we have not gotten one check that bounced. So I think that's a lot of credit to all the farmers that don't cheat us. So that worked out very well. We don't take credit cards because that's like giving 3 to 4% right off the top to somebody that we think didn't really earn that much money to make our business successful. Since our spout is around $600, the transaction cost at 3 to 4% is quite high. If we would be selling something that was maybe like $30, then you'd of course have way more deposits, and making deposits is a lot of work, and then maybe it would be more useful to do credit cards. But for us, it has worked very well. And my wife does all the selling on the phone, and also the receipts. So then, at least we didn't lose any money. And it's sort of like when you start a little business like this, it's sort of, what's the point of this? Do you want to earn like $1,000 or $2,000 so you can go on holiday? Or do you want to earn like, you know, $30,000, $40,000 a year to help your family income? Or is this supposed to be your retirement fund? And it just, we didn't really have a clear thing. It has worked out better than just paying for holiday. And so 10 spouts turned into 100, and now they turned into 1,000. And you know, when you start multiplying these numbers, then it gets into fairly good numbers. I don't see any way that we can really go very easily to 10,000 spouts. We probably would get into kind of market saturation fairly quickly. But for 1,000 spouts, I think there will be quite a number of years that we can do 1,000 or 1,500 a year. The sales area, because it's really important to know where you're selling to, I think. By the way, if there's any comments or questions in between, I'd gladly stop just to kind of, you know, see where you guys are coming from. So the sales area is really important. I mean, Western Canada is all very similar. Many farmers have very many little grain bins, like 2,000 to 5,000 bushel grain bins. And now with 13-inch augers and big combines, they fill up many of them in a day. So this is where our product fits the best. And of course, Saskatchewan is by far the best because it has by far the most farmers. And we noticed over the last 15 years at the trade show, whenever there's like a drought year or a low grain price year, sales are actually a little bit slower, even though it's such a small amount of money for the overall of the farm. Then another whole new story is the sales area south of the Canadian border. You'd think that North Dakota would be almost exactly like Saskatchewan, Manitoba, but we went to the Minot trade show for probably 4 or 5 years, and we sold 3 or 4 spouts every year. And then we were going to give up, and then all of a sudden we sold 30. So it seems like that it needed a certain, you know, people need to see it again and again before they will buy something like this. And since we only go to the one trade show there, it limits our exposure in North Dakota. And then what we notice now, though, is around that Minot area, let's say 200 kilometers around that area, we're getting people that know a neighbor that has one, and then they come to the show and they will buy one fairly easily. Same thing, of course, Americans have much lower grain prices and much less subsidy than we do, so it's much more difficult for them to buy a thing that costs $500. Sort of making a joke. If we go further south, then we're getting a lot into this corn and the soybeans, which I think is a little bit different because it all goes in a dryer and then maybe into big bins or maybe sometimes straight to the elevator, I don't know. But for whatever reason, we've had very little success in those places, and even in Minnesota. We do spend, yeah. The other thing is we do have free trade here, but it still is quite a bit of work and some expense to get any product across into the United States. So if we go to a US trade show, we sell with a dealer, and that means it gets shipped to a broker storage place in North Dakota, and then we have to go there and we have to pick it up and then bring it to the trade show. So it's a little bit more cumbersome than going to Brandon and to Regina. We do have one dealer that came out one time from New Zealand, and they sell brand augers in New Zealand, and they buy 10 spouts every year. Then we also thought, why is Australia not working for us at all? And we've had about 15 inquiries from dealers in Australia and not one that took on our product. So I'm not sure how Australian farmers are so much different than here, but it would be a good opportunity for us to go there and investigate this. I mean, to go to visit Australia, it doesn't sound like such a bad plan in any way. So then, like I said, we sell about 1,000 to 1,500 units a year now, which is okay. And then I thought, okay, well, we're sitting at these trade shows 3 days, it's sort of cool and stuff, but why not try a few other things? So I had bought an auger, and that didn't have an auger hopper mover, even though it was supposed to have it. So then I said, well, I'll build one. And I built one, and it actually works pretty good. It's not the fanciest, it's probably the cheapest, but for what I needed from my farm, 3 weeks of combining in the year, it's all I ever would need. And it's four-wheel drive, so it doesn't get stuck in the snow very easily. Well, it kind of is a lot of work making those things. Working with metal is much different than with plastic. And then in the end of the day, if I sell like 20 or 30 of them every year, that really doesn't add up to anything. It's almost easier trying to sell 20 or 30 more Spouts because the margin on them is about the same. Talking about margin on something like this, when you manufacture something, and I'm not really good at accounting or business in that sense, like in the introduction, it was said that I have a soil science background and all that stuff. I think myself as a half-decent farmer, half-decent agronomist. I thought, well, I should take a business degree. So I decided to do an MBA. Well, after 3 years of going through the MBA, I did graduate, but I really didn't learn anything. So I think money is, the quest to earn money is almost like a a talent, sort of like a musical talent or a sports talent, but I do not have the talent to accumulate large amounts of money. So anyways, but this, 9 of 10 ideas failed. Well, this really didn't fail, but it really didn't add to any amount of income. Like if we make a profit on this, maybe, 3,000 a year, that'll be pretty good on the hopper mover, which of course doesn't really add to anything. But generally, what some other manufacturing people have told me, they said that if you buy all the bits and pieces and put them all together, you should sell them for at least double of what you spend. So that means that would be your own labor, not the labor of other people, that's already included, and then the advertisement. Advertisement can be very expensive. So we're not quite at that double thing yet, but sometimes I think we should increase the price, but then I think, well, if it was any higher, then I probably wouldn't buy it myself. So that's not a really good market pricing research, but that's sort of where we're at. One other product that I thought is absolutely wonderful, it's a independent depth control opener that has a sweep on it, so that organic farmers don't have to till before they seed. But I don't think it'll maybe go anywhere because the industry isn't going a different direction. So now you know 2 things that failed, so that's enough. Other things that help when you try to do something like this, if you can tie in with something that that fits your product. And of course, our product tells you when the grain bin is full, so that means you do not have to go up anymore to check how full it is, which also means you will not fall down from the grain bin. And my wife does a lot of the selling at these trade shows, and she likes it when young people come, and she will do a presentation about farm safety on something like that. And in 2018, we got the prize at Ag Days for a Farm Safety Award. So that was really great for us. Print advertising. The Western Canadian farm newspapers are very good, but they're not cheap. I thought nowadays everybody does everything on their smartphone, but there's a lot of people reading the Western Producer and other newspapers, and they phone us when they go through these things. There's those marketing books. It's really good to be in there because many people know that it's in there, and then when they don't know your number, they'll look through it and stuff like this and find it, and that works out good. American newspaper are actually quite a bit cheaper than Canadian newspaper, but like I said before, we just don't get the response that we would like there, possibly because we don't double expose with the trade shows. Now in Western Canada, we don't go to terribly many trade shows, but we have people that we work with that take our product to Red Deer and to Saskatoon and to all different places. So we have fairly good exposure there. We did try radio excuse me, radio once, but that didn't go. Now the internet, I feel we're lacking very much in it. Of course, we have a website, we have a little video on YouTube and all those kind of things. We get internet advertising companies phoning us all the time, and they tell us how many hits there is and all those kinds of things. We don't understand anything like that properly, and we're really reluctant to spend a lot of money on things like that. Maybe it would be really good, I don't know. It would probably be a good way to get exposure outside of our area. But that's where we're at right now. The free things like the Combine Forum, for example, or on Facebook, there's a group I think called Farmer 306, and there's sometimes discussion about all kinds of things, including our product, so then you can kind of, read what's going on. We think this is one of our best advertisements. Every spout that has gone out probably in the last 15 years had our phone number on it. And I'm quite happy with this because I'm farmer too, and I have other machinery, and sometimes they don't work. And if there would be their company's phone number on there, I would phone them and tell them what I think of their machine sometimes. And we're open to that. Yes, sometimes things don't work on our product also, but it also gives people a phone number when their neighbor wants to buy one, and things like that. So, we do get quite good feedback from those things, and this is the best way to troubleshoot. Of course, we're not a big company. I get all the troubleshooting questions, and a wiring harness is quite simple. There's 12 volt going in, one wire goes to a light, one wire goes to the sensor, which comes back to the alarm. It's amazing how many people can mix those wires up and do all kinds of different things with them. But it has given me a lot of respect for when I phone my combine technician, and when I open up that breaker box or that computer box, there's literally hundreds or thousands of wires in there, and they can actually figure it out. So, they're doing pretty good. And I'm also able to figure out our wiring harness over the phone most of the time. So having that phone number on there gives everybody good access to us very quickly, and we sell probably 3/4 of our spouts sort of word of mouth. A neighbor has one, they come and they will buy one. Also, many people have 2 or 3 because they have multiple augers. Warranty, that almost killed us a few years ago. We had an alarm on there, which is a regular backup alarm by a good, reputable company, and they kept failing. And of course, if the alarm fails, then the bin overfills, and what's worse than having a full bin alarm that doesn't work? It's much worse to have that than to have no alarm. And when we found that out, we sent literally hundreds or 1,000 free alarms to different people. We didn't get everybody because by that time, of course, a lot of people were buying from dealers. So for 3 or 4 years after that, we would ask people at trade shows if they have the square alarm or the round alarm on them, and then we would give them free alarms. And it's really funny when you talk to somebody that phones you where something doesn't work and they're really upset, or they come to the trade show and something doesn't work and you give them a free alarm, they're almost more happy that it broke and got something for free than if it wouldn't have broken. So yeah, so it really, I think every dollar we wasted giving stuff away for free under warranty probably came back many times in more sales and more trust and so on. And this is actually why our thing ended up with having 2 alarms now. There's really no reason why it needs 2 alarms, but we were so upset that, it didn't work in the beginning with the other company that we just put 2 on. And it's probably a little bit louder, and it does give a second chance if one should ever break, but I've never even heard that even one of the 2 broke. So again, but I guess my point is, you know, standing behind your product and supporting it, and if something goes wrong, trying not to say, well, it's your fault, but and we also do have a money-back guarantee. If people don't like it, we will take it back. Sometimes the farmer came after 4 years and wanted to return it, but in general, it's really an absolute minor amount. Same thing as the alarm is the sensor. Of course, I don't know if you remember that airplane crash that happened in last November or something like this. Brand new airplane had a bad sensor and it crashed and killed everybody. Of course, we're not in that kind of business, but if our sensor fails, then the whole thing fails. So we tell everybody to check the sensor at the beginning of the season to make sure it works properly. There's no backup to our sensor. So if the sensor would fail, it will, the system will not work. It's a critical component of ours, and our daughter is the one that makes all the sensors, and she's very meticulous, and it's been working out quite well. Other parts that are not quite as critical in the manufacturing process is counting how many bolts go in a bag, and these helpers here, the price is right. But maybe sometimes you may get an extra bolt, or maybe one bolt too few, but we'll just have to live with that for now. Most of, like I said, the harness is made in a kind of electrical shop, but all the cutting the holes and bolting things together and bagging and stuff is done mostly by our neighbors' kids. They're usually about 15, 16 years old, and it's sort of their first job, and we check up on them, and they do a wonderful job. So this is what our booth looks like. About half of our Spouts get sold through dealers. We're trying to go more and more into the dealer thing. Of course, the problem with dealers is that they take about 20 or 25 of your profit right off the top. But I guess that's just how everything works, like in these situations. We've had some great dealers from the very beginning, like Cutmore Brothers, like a co-op in Grandview, and Altona, and so on, that have been with us right from the beginning, and going through some of the growing pains, and so on. And we appreciate them very much. Now we're getting larger, or more dealers, and that has just made it very easy. And this way we can ship larger quantities. Trade shows are really great for feedback and ideas for improvement. Unfortunately, we can't make most of the improvements because it would get really expensive, or it would not work for other things. For example, one improvement that we could make is we could install a sensor that measures not only when the bin is full, but it would measure how many feet there is left to be filling. But that would turn a $600 spout into a $4,000 spout, so I'm not sure what our market potential is for something like that. So what's our long-term plan? We don't really have a long-term plan. I think it's working sort of from day to day, from year to year. We're making 1,500 for this year, and sort of my thought is, as long as there is augers, maybe there's a need for these kinds of spouts. But once we see sales going down, we'll probably just reduce the number. We don't have any great ambition to diversify into something else. Like I just explained, we tried that with different things in the same booth, and it didn't really go anywhere. So that is basically it. Are there any comments? No questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much all for coming, and yeah, so the little business has worked for us very well. It's been almost a little bit like a hobby, and of course it has made some money. Yeah, thank you.